The battlefield was quiet now, too quiet. Smoke floated in the air, covering everything like a blanket of death. Corporal Jake Lawson lay half-buried in the dirt, bleeding, broken, and alone. His right leg was crushed, and he couldn't feel. His left arm, all he could do was breathe, and even that hurt. He had no idea how long he had been lying there. Maybe hours, maybe days. The last thing he remembered was the ambush. The screaming, the blast. Then everything went dark. Now it was only pain, silence, and the feeling of being forgotten. His helmet visor was cracked, blood in his eyes. The Cums were dead, and the sky above looked like it was on fire. Not one of his squad had survived. He had watched them fall. One by one, Jake knew he was next. He had accepted death until the shadow came. It wasn't a ship or a drone. It was something tall, moving slowly, carefully, through the smoke. A figure appeared, towering, elegant, alien. She had greenish skin that shimmered under the burning sky. Her silver eyes glowed softly as she knelt beside him. Jake tried to reach for his gun, but his hand barely moved. She placed a large, gentle hand on his chest, stopping him. Her touch was warm, not cold like a machine. She wasn't there to kill him. He couldn't understand her language, but her voice was soft, almost like a lullaby. She scanned his wounds with some kind of floating crystal. Then she lifted him into her arms. Like he weighed nothing, he wanted to speak, ask her why, but his lips only whispered, "Why, help me." She didn't answer, just looked at him with something he hadn't seen in a long time, kindness. Then everything faded again. Jake blacked out, safe in the arms of a giant alien woman. When he woke up, the pain was less. He wasn't on the battlefield anymore. He was lying on a soft surface inside a strange room made of glowing stone and vines. It smelled like flowers and steam. Soft blue lights floated in the air like little stars. The alien woman was sitting beside him, her long arms folded across her chest. She looked peaceful, watching over him like a mother watching her child sleep. Jake blinked, confused. She noticed and smiled gently. There was no fear in her face. No hatred, only concern. She offered him water in a curved glass. He drank slowly, surprised it didn't taste weird, just clean. She touched his shoulder and said something in her language he didn't understand, but her tone calmed him. Every day she came back. She cleaned his wounds, brought strange but tasty food. She even made him laugh once, when she tripped over her own tail and grumbled something. With a pout, he started calling her mommy as a joke. He didn't know why, maybe because she cared more than anyone had since the war started. Jake couldn't walk yet, but he was healing. She used strange glowing stones, herbs, and humming devices. And she never left him alone for long. Whenever he woke up in the night, she was there, silent, watching. One evening, Jake asked her name. She paused, then pointed to herself and said slowly, "Ralina." He repeated it. "Ra. Nah." She nodded, pleased, and touched his forehead gently. He asked, "Why did you save me?" She didn't answer, but she reached into a pouch and pulled out a small crystal. It floated above her palm, glowing. Images appeared of her kind, tall and graceful, holding small alien children in their arms. Her people were caregivers, protectors, not soldiers. Jake watched the moving pictures, his throat tight. She wasn't part of the war. She was part of something older, something better. She had found him and saved him, not because he was a soldier, but because he was hurt, because he was alone. Tears burned his eyes. This alien, this so-called enemy, had more heart than most of the generals he had served under. That night, as he fell asleep, he whispered, "Thank you, Mommy Ralena." She didn't understand the words, but she understood the feeling. And in the quiet glow of the alien sanctuary, a broken soldier began to heal, and an ancient guardian found something she thought she had lost, a reason to care again. When Jake opened his eyes again, he thought he was dreaming. No pain screamed through his bones like before. No bombs, no screams, no gunfire. Just soft light and the slow hum of strange machines. He was alive somehow, and not on Earth or any base he recognized. The walls were made of a smooth, breathing stone, pale blue and slightly warm to the touch. There were no doors, only archways covered with silk-like drapes made of silver threads. The air smelled like wildflowers and steam. Tiny glowing orbs floated above him, gently pulsing as if they had heartbeats. Jake shifted slightly and groaned, still weak. Immediately she came. The tall alien woman, Rolona. Her long limbs moved gracefully as she approached his bed. She knelt beside him, brushing his hair from his forehead. "You saved me," Jake said softly. She responded with a sound soft and musical, one hand resting lightly over his chest. Though her words made no sense, her eyes spoke clearly. "You are safe." Each day in the sanctuary brought something new. Rolona would feed him a thick liquid that tasted like honey and mint. He couldn't move much, but she massaged his limbs, cleaned his wounds, and spoke to him in that soft alien tongue she hummed sometimes, a haunting melody that made Jake close his eyes and forget everything that had ever hurt him. He began to feel stronger, slowly. One day she helped him sit up. He looked at her, really looked. She wasn't just tall, she was elegant, with long white hair that shimmered in light, and markings that glowed faintly across her skin like veins of silver. He noticed a scar across her left shoulder, long healed. She had known pain too. Jake tapped his chest and said, "Jake." Then he pointed to her. She tilted her head and replied, "Rolona." He smiled weakly. "Nice to meet you, Rolona." She smiled back, a smile not just of the lips but the soul. Over time, she brought him little objects, curved crystals, strange feathers, and glowing beads. She would show him how they worked, or what sound they made, or what memory they held. One time, she gave him a stone that, when touched, played a memory. In it, a younger Rolona held a tiny alien child in her arms, feeding it from her own glowing hand. The child giggled, reached up, and hugged her face. Jake watched in silence, something heavy rising in his chest. She had been a mother, or something like it. Maybe not by blood, but by choice, and now she had chosen him. Jake looked down at his broken leg, now covered in glowing gel, and he wondered, how much of him could she fix? Not just the body, but the man who had seen too much war, too much death. There were no windows in the sanctuary. Jake didn't know where it was, on a planet, in space, underground. But it didn't matter. He felt safer here than anywhere he had ever been. One day, Rolona brought a small floating screen. It showed an image of Earth, a map, pulsing red in areas where the fighting was worst. Jake's heart sank. The war wasn't over. Humans were still dying, still fighting, and he was just here, healing. He looked at her, confused. She showed him another image, her planet, or what used to be one, burned, destroyed, cities in ruins. Her people were gone, hunted by both humans and alien factions. Why? Because they had refused to join the war. Rolona had once belonged to an ancient order of caregivers, protectors of life. But when war consumed the galaxy, kindness was seen as weakness. She had stayed behind to save the wounded, even when her sisters left or were killed. She was alone now. Until she found him. Jake leaned back, tears stinging his eyes. She had lost everything, but still chose to help. He asked her quietly, "Why me?" She touched his face, and for the first time, she spoke in broken English. "Because." Her eyes same as mine. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. The sanctuary was silent. But his thoughts were not. He kept thinking about his fallen squad, the war, and the kindness of the one he was taught to fear. He looked across the room at Rolona, sitting by a small glowing fountain. Her eyes closed in deep thought or prayer. Maybe the galaxy didn't need more soldiers. Maybe it needed more mothers, he whispered. "Thank you, Mommy Rolona," again, and even though she didn't answer, he knew she heard. He had come too. This place broken, but here, in the arms of a 9-foot alien woman who had every reason to hate him, he was beginning to feel something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Days passed slowly in the alien sanctuary. Jake's body healed faster than anyone could have believed. But what truly changed was not his bones or muscles, it was his heart. The war had taken everything from him, yet here he was, alive, cared for, protected not by humans, but by the one he was supposed to fear. Rowena was quiet by nature. She didn't speak much, even in her own tongue. But she was always watching, always listening, and one evening, without a word, she brought a large glowing crystal into the room. She placed it on a low pedestal made of vines and stone, then gestured for Jake to sit. The crystal began to glow. And then images, sounds, and motions, they all poured out like water from a dam. Jake gasped. He wasn't just seeing pictures, he was feeling them. The memories of Rowlena's people flowed into him, whole stories told without words. A history written in pain, in compassion, in silence. He saw a planet covered in green forests and silver towers. A peaceful species, tall and graceful, known as the Vahari. Their culture was not based on power or weapons, but on care, healing, and balance. Every Vahari child was raised not by one mother, but by an entire circle of guardians. They didn't build armies, they built sanctuaries. They didn't conquer, they comforted. Jake saw Rowlena as a young Vahari, lifting a wounded alien child from wreckage, then another, and another. She traveled across galaxies to help those no one else would save. She had seen species die out, forgotten. She had held them as they took their last breath. She had buried them when no one else cared. Then came the war, the great galactic conflict between the Human Alliance and the Threxan Dominion. Everyone had to choose a side, but the Vahari didn't believe in sides. They believed in peace, and for that, they were hunted, their sanctuaries burned, their healers executed. Their kindness was labeled as betrayal. Rowlena's sanctuary was the last, hidden in a forgotten corner of a ruined moon. She was the final one left, and still, she chose to stay. She kept the light burning, hoping one day someone would come not to fight, but to be saved. The memory ended, the crystal dimmed. Jake wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, stunned into silence. Rowlena didn't speak. She only watched him carefully, as if waiting for his judgment. But there was none, only respect. Jake struggled to stand and took her hand in his. It was large, her fingers twice the length of his, but warm and gentle. He whispered, "I'm sorry." She tilted her head, confused. "I'm sorry my kind did this to yours," he said again, voice shaking, and then the smallest tear fell from her silver eye. In that moment, something between them changed. Not just survivor and rescuer, not patient and healer, something deeper, more human and more alien, a quiet bond no war could break. That night, Jake could not sleep. He walked slowly through the sanctuary using a vine-crafted cane Rowlena had made for him. He found a chamber filled with orbs, each softly glowing, each hovering in midair. He reached out and touched one. It showed a scene of a battlefield, not his, but one from another world. A Vahari woman knelt beside a dying insectoid creature. Instead of leaving it, she placed both hands on its chest and sang. The creature's breathing slowed, its pain faded, and it died with peace in its eyes. Jake touched another orb, another memory, a small child crying alone in a broken ship. Rowlena appeared, cradling the child, feeding it from her own energy. No reward, no recognition, just pure kindness. Jake realized then, Rowlena wasn't just rare, she was something the galaxy had forgotten. A living memory of a better way. And maybe that was why she had saved him. Because something in him was also broken, also lost. He returned to his room, where she was waiting. She said one word in his language, slow and uncertain, "Family." Jake smiled, tears in his eyes again. "Yes," he whispered. "Family." From that moment, he promised himself he wouldn't let her light die in silence. He would protect her, just as she had protected him, even if the whole galaxy turned against them. Jake had almost forgotten what fear felt like. Not the kind of fear that came from gunfire or explosions, but the deep, cold fear that comes when you know peace is about to end. It started with a sound, barely noticeable at first, a faint hum in the air, too mechanical, too cold. Rowlena stopped what she was doing and turned her head slightly. Eyes narrowing, Jake saw the tension in her body, the stillness of a predator. Sensing danger, she didn't speak, but her movements became quicker, sharper. She activated hidden shields that shimmered briefly across the sanctuary walls. Jake asked, "What is it?" She simply answered, "Eyes in sky." Later that day, the screen showed it, an unmanned human recon drone. It had passed over the outer hills just once, but it was enough. Jake's heart dropped. The sanctuary wasn't hidden anymore. They had found her, and that meant more were coming. Rowlena moved with urgency but no panic. She placed healing tools and memory crystals into hidden compartments. She deactivated energy fields that could be tracked and shut off most lights. She even covered parts of the walls with vines and dirt to make them appear abandoned. Jake watched. Helpless, he had barely recovered, still walking with a limp. He wanted to help, but didn't know how. She led him to a lower chamber, deeper underground. It was smaller, darker, with thick roots and moss-covered walls. "Stay," she said, placing a soft cloth in his hands. Jake shook his head. "No," he said. "I'm not hiding while you face them alone." But she only smiled gently and placed a large hand on his shoulder. "Safe," she whispered, then turned and climbed back up. Jake sat in the dark, fists clenched. Memories flooded his mind, his squad. The war, the endless fighting, and now this. The one being who had shown him kindness was about to be hunted down by his own kind. Above, the sky cracked with thunder. Not from a storm, from engines. A human dropship broke through the clouds and hovered above the hill. Jake could feel the vibrations even underground. The sanctuary shook slightly as boots hit the soil. Soldiers, 10, maybe more, fully armored. Weapons drawn, eyes scanning. Jake couldn't stay hidden. He limped up the tunnel as fast as he could, each step a scream through his leg. When he reached the surface, he saw her. Rowlena stood at the edge of the sanctuary, hands raised in peace. She didn't flinch as the soldiers pointed their rifles at her. "Identify yourself." One shouted. She remained silent, unmoving. The soldiers tightened their circle, ready to fire. "No." Jake shouted, stumbling forward. They turned, shocked to see another human. "What the hell are you doing here?" The commander barked. Jake didn't stop. He stood between them and Rowlena, hands raised. "She saved me," he yelled. "She's not the enemy. She's an alien." One soldier shouted back, "She could be a Threxan spy." Jake shook his head. "She's a healer. She's not part of the war." The commander narrowed his eyes. "You've been compromised," he growled. Jake took a deep breath. "Then compromise me," he said. "But don't shoot her." Standoff felt like forever. The wind howled. The guns didn't lower. Rowlena didn't move. She stood tall, calm, ready to die. Finally, one soldier hesitated. "She doesn't look armed," he said. "Scanners show no weapons, no threat," said another. Still, the commander's finger hovered over the trigger. "She's a risk," he muttered. Jake looked him straight in the eye. "Then let me be responsible for her," he said. "Put her under my care." "You're a corporal," the commander replied. "You don't have that authority," Jake replied. "Then arrest me too." Silence. "Then, stand down," the commander barked. Reluctantly, the rifles lowered. They cuffed Rowlena with glowing restraints. She didn't fight. Jake walked beside her, his hands raised too, and together, they left the sanctuary, surrounded by soldiers. As they boarded the dropship, Jake looked back, the sanctuary her home. Her world was fading behind them. He clenched his fists. He had bought her time. But now a bigger fight was coming. They were taking her to Earth. And Jake knew this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. Because he would protect her, even if it meant turning against everything he once believed in. The shuttle descended into Earth's atmosphere like a falling star. Inside, Jake sat beside Rowlena, chained but calm. Her silver eyes looked out the window, not with fear, But with quiet acceptance, Jake couldn't stop looking at her wrists. Bruised where the restraints dug into her skin, he wanted to tear the cuffs off. Scream at someone, do something. But for now, he could only sit, silent and powerless. They landed at a military facility in the European Alliance Zone. Not a battlefield, but not a sanctuary either. Steel walls, security drones, armed guards, everything was built to contain threats, and in their eyes, she was exactly that. Raylena was led into a containment chamber with force fields instead of bars. Scientists came first, poking and prodding, scanning every inch of her. They spoke in cold tones, like she was a specimen, not a living being. She didn't resist, didn't respond. She just watched them with tired eyes. Jake tried to protest. "She saved me," he told them. "She's not part of the war." But they didn't listen. To them, he was compromised, tainted by alien sympathy. Still, he didn't back down. Soon, the story leaked to the public. An alien healer, captured by humans, defended by a broken soldier. News outlets everywhere picked it up. Some called her a threat. Others called her a miracle. But nobody agreed on what she was, so they called for a tribunal, a public trial broadcast live across Earth and the colonies. 3 judges, hundreds of cameras, and one silent alien standing in the center. Jake was called as the first witness. He limped to the stand, nerves shaking. His uniform was wrinkled, his voice hoarse, but his eyes burned with something new. They asked him, "Did she manipulate you?" He replied, "She healed me." They asked, "Was she trying to turn you against humanity?" He said, "She showed me what humanity forgot: compassion." They asked, "Do you love her?" He paused. "I don't know what I feel," he said, "but I'd die for her." The judges leaned back, unimpressed. They called scientists next, who claimed she used unknown energy. They called generals who warned she might be a sleeper agent. They showed blurry images of her species on other battlefields, but they had no proof, only fear. Finally, they asked Raylena to speak. She stepped forward, tall and graceful. A translator device glowed around her neck, humming softly. She placed a hand on her chest and said, "I am Raylena of the Vahari. My people chose to heal, not harm. We were punished for that choice. I stayed behind to care for the broken. Even when the broken came to kill me." The chamber went silent. Her voice was low but full of power. She did not cry, did not beg. She simply stood tall, proud of who she was. Jake watched from the side, heart pounding. He didn't know how the judges would respond. They whispered among themselves, frowns deepening. Then one judge turned to her. "If we let you go, what will you do?" Raylena looked at Jake, then back at the judge. "I will continue what I was born to do," she said. "Heal." For hours they debated. Some wanted her imprisoned forever. Others said she could be studied. A few believed she should be set free. And then, the verdict, the judges stood. The lead judge spoke. "Raylena of the Vahari, we do not fully understand you, but no crime has been proven. You are free to go under the protection of the Human Alliance." Jake exhaled sharply, hands shaking. The chamber exploded in noise, cheers, protests, disbelief. They released her cuffs, and for the first time, Raylena smiled. Not a small smile, but something bigger, brighter. Jake walked up to her, unable to hold back. He took her hand and whispered, "You did it." But she shook her head. "We did it," she replied. Reporters crowded the exit, asking questions, snapping photos. Jake shielded her as they walked out. She didn't flinch, didn't hide. The whole world was watching, and still she walked like a queen. Outside, a transport ship waited, not to imprison her, but to take her somewhere new. A medical facility where she could help others, both human and alien. The galaxy didn't trust her fully yet, but they were watching, and maybe, just maybe, learning. That day, a new title began to echo across broadcasts and news feeds. Not alien threat, not unknown danger, but something softer. Galactic Mother, she who heals the broken, alien mommy, and Jake? He was no longer just a soldier. He had become something else, her voice, her shield, her bridge to a world still learning how to feel again. Ra'Lana was no longer a secret. She wasn't hidden in a moon cave or mistaken for a ghost in the sea. Ruins of war. She was known now by soldiers, civilians, and leaders across the human alliance. The one they once feared was now seen by many as a healer, but fame is a strange fire. It brings both light and shadows. Her face appeared in news clips, her name whispered in council rooms. Some called her a saint, others a symbol of betrayal, and yet, through it all, she never stopped her mission. Jake stood beside her as they entered the new facility clean. Halls, white lights, and walls lined with medbeds. But this wasn't a military hospital, it was something else. A joint healing center created for both human and alien war survivors. The first of its kind, and it bore her name, the Ra'Lana Recovery Dome. She moved from room to room with quiet grace, touching wounds, scanning bodies, whispering in languages long forgotten. No one understood her words, but all felt their weight. She didn't cure everything, but she made pain lighter. Jake watched her work and felt something shift in his chest. She had brought him back from the edge now. She was doing it for others, not with lasers or medicine, but with something more ancient compassion. He helped when he could, organizing supplies, training new staff, but most days, he just watched her, and every time she passed, she'd rest her hand on his shoulder for just a moment. It said everything. You are still with me. Not everyone was happy about the dome. Some war veterans protested outside the gates. They carried signs that read, "Alien lies," and "Don't trust the enemy." Some threw rocks, some spit on the glass. But Ra'Lana never reacted. Jake wanted to shout back, to fight, but she would simply take his hand and whisper, peace louder than rage. Then one night, something changed. A wounded Threxan ship cracked and burning crash landed near the outer sector. Inside were survivors, including children. The same enemy that had destroyed human colonies and killed Jake's squad. Now lying helpless, dying. Military protocol was clear: contain or eliminate. But Jake looked at Ra'Lana. She looked back. No words were needed. He nodded, and together they took a medical team to the site. The soldiers protested, but Jake held up his old dog tags and said, I fought them, and I know what hate does. Let's try something else. They brought the Threxans in scared, bleeding, snarling, but under her care, the fear melted. The youngest one, no older than 10, clung to Ra'Lana's arm and purred softly. She carried him to bed like a mother would. Jake had to wipe his eyes. News of this act spread fast, and this time, it wasn't just humans watching. Alien worlds began sending messages, some full of hope, others full of warning. The message was clear. Not everyone wanted healing. Some still wanted war. A shadow crept across their mission. An anonymous message arrived, broadcast into the dome's comm system. She's uniting the broken, the voice said. And some of us like them broken. Jake knew what it meant. Peace was dangerous to those who profited from pain, and now, Ra'Lana wasn't just a healer. She was a threat, not because she fought, but because she refused to that night. Jake checked the dome's perimeter 3 times. Security drones on, sensor walls active. Still, he couldn't sleep. He stood outside her quarters and watched the stars. Ra'Lana stepped beside him, silent as always. She looked up at the sky, her silver eyes reflecting constellations. Jake didn't know. Stars far, she said softly, but light reaches. Jake nodded. They'll come for you, he said. She looked at him. They always did. He took her hand. Then this time, he whispered, they'll have to go through me. The stars above Earth shimmered in silence, but deep in the black, something was coming. Not peace, not mercy, but war, again. A fleet of rogue Threxan warships broke from their empire, uncontrolled, angry, and filled with hatred. Their goal was chaos, not victory. They didn't care who died, as long as someone burned. Human outposts went dark one by one. Emergency beacons flashed, but there was no time. They were headed straight for Earth. And on Earth, in the quiet center of peace, stood the Rallana Recovery Dome, the one place that had dared to welcome both sides. Jake stood in the command center, his hand clenched around a tablet. The screen showed the trajectory, impact in hours. He turned to the staff. Evacuate the patients. He sighed. Get them to the underground shelters. Rallana stood beside him, calm as always. But there was something in her eyes, sorrow, not fear for herself, but fear for what might be lost. Jake looked at her. You should go too, he said. She shook her head. I stay, she whispered. This is home. Soldiers offered to extract her by air. The Human Alliance sent encrypted orders, protect the alien at all costs. But Rallana refused. This place is not me, she said. These people, these souls. They are. As the sky turned red from distant explosions, Jake stood in front of the dome with a rifle slung over his shoulder. Behind him, patients were being moved through tunnels, civilians, soldiers, aliens, everyone touched by her kindness. None of them wanted to leave her behind, and then, the sky tore open. The Threxan warships broke through the clouds like falling dragons. Gunfire rained down on Earth. The dome's shields flared under the assault, holding, but barely, Rallana. Walked calmly through the chaos, her arms stretched out, eyes glowing faintly. She activated the dome's last defense, a biofield linked directly to her body, a shield made of energy and will, a wall of light that could only stand while she stood. Jake screamed for her to stop. It'll kill you. She turned to him and smiled. If I fall, others rise. The Threxan ships came lower. Firing again, the ground shook, lights flickered. Rallana stood firm. The shield pulsed brighter, stronger. But her skin began to dim, her steps slower. Jake ran to her, caught her as she collapsed to one knee. Her breath came heavy, but she was still smiling. Behind them, people had stopped running. They were watching. A Threxan fighter broke through and came down hard, crashing into the earth. Not far from them, the cockpit burst open. Inside was a pilot bleeding, disoriented. Jake raised his gun, ready to fire, but Rallana held his hand. Wait, she whispered. She stepped forward, even as her body trembled, and she reached out to the enemy. The pilot blinked, dazed. He looked at her and lowered his weapon, then dropped it, and bowed his head. From the sky, the other ships paused. A broadcast crackled through every channel. In the Threxan language, a voice said, She touched the old codes. She honors life. She is Vahari. One by one, the ships stopped firing. They hovered in the sky like confused ghosts. And then, one after another, they turned. They left, just like that. Silence returned, only. The wind moved now. Jake dropped to his knees beside her. Her pulse was faint. She had poured out everything, for them. Stay with me, he begged. Her eyes fluttered open. Still. Here, she whispered. For now. Medical teams rushed in, carried her gently. She was stable, but weak, very weak. News spread like wildfire. An alien woman had saved Earth with her own life force. Not through violence, but through courage. Weeks passed. The dome was rebuilt, twice the size, twice the staff. Donations poured in from across the galaxy. Peace talks resumed. Old enemies sat together at her bedside. Some wept, some simply bowed. Jake stayed by her every day. He read her messages from children, from soldiers, from alien tribes she'd never met. Each letter carried one word: hope. When she finally woke again, the world held its breath. She looked around slowly, then at Jake. You didn't leave, she whispered. Never, he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small crafted necklace. It wasn't expensive, but it was shaped like two hands holding a star. He placed it around her neck. For the one who held all of us, he said, and across the stars, in every tongue and every home. Her name lived on, not as a threat, not as a legend, but as something better. The one who healed the galaxy. The 9-foot alien mommy who chose to care when no one else did.